Alright, hello everyone. Welcome back to rebuilding Pacifica in Cyberpunk 2077. This is episode number 3, and I will say straight away that this episode is really showcasing how boring this process can indeed be. I think the whole point really of this video in particular was not to show off how cool it is to put down props and lighting and, you know, making scenes look interesting per se, but rather the necessary, boring, fiddly, downright fucking frustrating parts of trying to create a building from scratch which doesn't exist in Cyberpunk through the use of a third-party mod. One thing which I have noticed though, as a result of trying to undertake this project, is that the appearance menu mod, which is obviously what I've been using to try and build this thing, is clearly not designed for this kind of, I don't want to say scope because that sounds very arrogant, but from what I can tell, it's mostly used for swapping out decor. You know, like V's apartment, people can build new presets, put in some lights and some new props, blah blah blah. I don't necessarily think it's for creating entirely new buildings from scratch. I don't know, I could be wrong. But to me, because the process is so fiddly, actually building a structure from nothing is very frustrating in some areas. It's extremely tedious, and at least with me, I'm not even happy with how it comes out. Like, for example, the exterior of this building, because obviously I intended this to be some kind of a complaints office, right? Like a fairly small commercial building, which of course is run down, and I want it to have a similar feeling to Saul Goodman's office. You know, not exactly dirty or poverty-stricken, but rather not exactly funded. You know, not a lot of energy has gone into the building itself because all of the money is going in the pockets of the company. I don't know if that's very Cyberpunk-esque. I suppose it is, really. So as a result of this, you know, trying to do things like filling in the tops of the buildings becomes quite difficult from not only a practical perspective, but then also an aesthetic perspective as well. Because I've employed some, there you go, there's the A-level English again. I've employed some, you know, glass, obviously the glass walls similar to the other structures. But then these models are not going to work if there's two of them. You know, because it's going to be too tall. The doors are obviously one size, so they're not going to be tall enough, and none of it will add up. So I have to end up putting in these models, like these big white walls, which just don't look great, but they serve a practical purpose. And this is where I'm the most unsatisfied with this build currently, and I think I actually end up taking pretty much all of this out because it just doesn't work in the slightest. Need to de-lime scale that kettle. You know when like you have a tea or coffee and you get right to the bottom and you take the last swig and you just get like the little bits of lime scale in your mouth. Oof! Usually I like it, but you know, not when you're trying to record. Usually I actually take them out of my mouth and I put them in like a little pile, sort of underneath my desk. I just keep them there. And if I get really lonely at night when, you know, like I'm been on the drink all day, I'll end up talking to them and giving them names. So here's something a little bit more interesting, and this is just me trying to fill out the last bit of the interior for this complaints department. The way I was making this, I don't know, play out, I guess, in my head, was that clearly, you know, this needs to be Saul Goodman's office. It needs to be a little bit similar in terms of very cheap looking, uncomfortable, but it still has that kind of dingy early 2000s commercial feel. You know, that very particular kind of liminal almost, where everything smells like dust. You have kind of beige colours. How I remember going into my mum's work when I was 5 years old, you know, that kind of thing. So I started putting in some furniture which just looked fairly cheap, and I know it doesn't exactly align with Pacifica, but it aligns with the entire building. If I would start putting in glass furniture, as much as that is Pacifica, I just don't think it would fit. And all the while as well, just making sure that the scene makes sense. You know, I place down chairs. Why do I place down chairs? Well, because people are waiting to put their complaint in. The complaints are taken from the shutters, which I put in before. But then, because people are waiting, you're obviously going to need waiting room items like an ashtray, like magazines, which are open and pointed in the direction of where people would be reading them. You know, because otherwise, to me at least, it just looks like a load of props chucked in willy-nilly with no sort of purpose. And here's a little before and after. Quite literally going from nothing to something. I think it's pretty fucking cool. I'm surprised my game hasn't blown up yet. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Stay tuned for episode 4. Thank you. Take care.